Hi, I'm Ethan. I love muzzleloading, and in this clip from the 2022 Contemporary Longrifle Association show, we're talking with Greg Murry about his display featuring the Crockett family of long rifles. These are the only documented long rifles with a connection to Davy Crockett. I think you're going to enjoy the history that Greg has to share with us today.
Hey, I'm Greg Murry. I'm the curator for the Crockett Rifle Project. It's been an interesting 8-year road with the owner of the original, Mary Watkins, and our focus is to bring the history of the Crockett family, that's uncle and cousins to David Crockett, and show it at different shows. So our timeline starts from Samuel the Elder, and as you can see the dates, Samuel the Elder migrated from France to Ireland. His family landed in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where he apprenticed, and that architecture of the Lancaster County School uh, proliferated down through his family. Uh, Samuel handed down the rifle making trade to his three sons, Lieutenant Andrew Crockett being the youngest of the three, then handed that down to his son and his grandson, Samuel III and Andrew III. They established Ford's Seat in Brentwood, Tennessee, 1808 to 1826. And operated a water-powered trip hammer. This building was built as a cow barn around the original forge, which you can see here, the remains that are inside that old barn. And it has been quite the honor to be in this building and photograph the different elements. And this is the Holy Grail, the trip wheel, the pit. They operated a water-powered trip hammer, which documents the information that we have that Andrew Jackson stopped at Ford's Seat to pick up a large volume of guns for his quest to the Battle of New Orleans. Of the three rifles that have surfaced, one of them is numbered 75. So that gives us a multiple documentation with the trip hammer, the number 75, of course. Then we know that they were very prolific in making a very subsistence rifle. This is the original, one of the three. It's signed on the top flat, S&AC, with their maker's mark of a flintlock rifle. On the bottom flat, it's numbered 19, which would have been the run, and also number 11. Now we know that number 11 indicates 1811 for the reason that we have another rifle that is number 11, number 14. So these two were dated 1811. On the bottom flat is another letter C, indicating a significance to the Crockett family rifle makers. The other rifle of the three was never converted to percussion, as this one was. It's still a flint. It's dated 1823, number 75. When we were in Ohio at the Ohio Gun Collectors Association, we had this on exhibit at the display show in May, and we were awarded the NRA Silver Medal Award, which was very significant.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah,
Wow.
thank you. Yeah. We were shocked.
So when you're talking about the numbers on these pieces,
Yeah.
you're taking them apart
Yes,
and analyzing them.
correct.
In a very careful manner.
Very careful. This rifle, when it was first on my bench, was with the first meeting that I had with the owner and the descendant. We made arrangements for another meeting to take the barrel out of the wood to see if there was any surprises, and we weren't disappointed. You know, when there was the other letter C, the number 11 and 19 gave us another layer of documentation. So at that point, we decided to do the restoration, which it needed very little restoration, mostly cleaning and stabilizing. And then, of course, from that point on, I started doing the reproductions. Yeah.
What kind of, was it just over time, you know, from time, just a lot of dirt and grime had built up on it? Or
on this rifle, it was, yes. You know, in stress on the wood, there were some cracks. There was a screw missing. But other than that, it just needed some very careful, you know, cleaning and putting it in order so it doesn't continue to deteriorate. Now, the other two require extensive restoration. The rifle that was never converted to percussion was missing the lock. There was a lot of wood missing. There was a big chunk of wood out at the mortise of the lock, so there had to be a lot of work done on that particular piece. Yeah. Andrew Jackson stopping at forge seat, for the most part, has been verbal documentation until a particular letter arose. The federal park systems authorized a monument on the Natchez Trace Parkway dedicating that forge seat made rifles for Andrew Jackson, and they stopped. We also have the original document that came out of the estate, which is the general orders. This is the original. When you take it out of the sleeve and you turn it over, you can see the impression from the letterpress. So it is definitely an original document. And especially the rifle that was number 75 of the three, indicating they were making large volume runs.
Right.
You know, that pretty much, you know, with the paper documentation, the fact that we discovered they operated a trip hammer, and number 75 on a rifle, they were probably doing a run of 100. You know, they were very prolific, and they probably supplied a lot of guns for Andrew Jackson. However, we don't have an invoice, but we do have a document of the land grant that was offered for payment on that.
Okay.
Which was the way most of those
Right.
transitions were done.
So they were paid in that land grant.
Right.
And that's a significant amount of land to make us think that they were a large.
Right. Yeah, and I think Andrew, Lieutenant Andrew had 3 or 4 different land grants because of his service for the Revolution. Then, of course, this is also interesting. Well, both of these, we have a real-time documentation. This is a copy, obviously, of the original advertisement that after Lieutenant died, James Crockett purchased the forging tools. We don't have documentation that he was a gun maker, but we do have documentation that he financed the ability for Samuel III and Andrew III to continue the rifle making, and they're advertising, letting the community know that they haven't ceased, they're continuing that rifle making. This are the descendants that have been in charge of the original rifles. So from Samuel, Andrew, William, Robert, Mary James, and Mary have had this original in their care.
Wow.
Since 1811.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and we have, you know, that documentation is huge.
That brings it from then to now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so kind of make a long story short, I had a brick and mortar rifle making shop in the historic village of Leapers Fork, and I was introduced to Mary James, Mary's mother. We had a phone call. She didn't want anybody to see the rifle. 14 years passed. Mary James passed away, handed the rifle down to her daughter. I got an email, made a phone call, we reconnected, and then that's when we started this whole collaboration between us to um, put this Crockett project together. Yeah, it's been just crazy cool. Yeah, yeah. So since the three originals surfaced, being that all three are identical to each other, they're stocked in cherry wood, they're tapered to flared barrels, the trigger guards are identical, the signatures are identical, front sights, rear sights, underlugs, ramrod pipes, everything is identical. Lancaster County architecture. And so in the process of developing this project, the portrait of David that was done by Chapman, the rifle that David is holding is painted in cherry wood. It does not have a butt plate. That rifle is clearly Lancaster County architecture. It appears to be in tapered to flared. It does not have a patch box. It is clearly David is holding a rifle that was made at Ford Seat. Now, in the memoirs of this painting, Chapman and David appears to be making a story about having to find the stuff in order to do this portrait. But then when we have three originals that are identical to the rifle he's holding, what are the odds that if that was a prop rifle that was found by a woodsman is pretty unlikely. Being as they're uncle and cousins, they're from Tennessee, I believe it's clear that David is holding a rifle that his uncle and cousins made. Now, where that rifle is, that's anybody's guess. And we don't make any claim that any of the three rifles were ever in David's hands.
Right.
But we do have the documentation that it's the only rifles in American history with a documented Crockett rifle making family connection to David Crockett. Early on in the Crockett project, when I did my first shows, someone says, "Oh my gosh, you need to do a book." So I put this together. It's one of those print on demand, and it documents from the beginning through the process of building the rifle with the historic documentation, have the grave site markers at the Crockett Cemetery. This is Ford Seat that still is still there today. It's in private hands. All the documentation. This is the dedication on the Natchez Trace for the monument that was dedicated by the Daughters of the American Revolution that are significant to Ford Seat supplying rifles to Andrew Jackson. And this is, of course, the document and images of rifles that I've built that are exact copies of the rifles that came out of Ford Seat. Started building guns in 1991. In 1999, I established Leaper's Fork flintlocks in a historic village. And I think maybe I've built 100 guns. The biggest feather in my cap in contemporary building is a 2-year project that we took to Reno, Nevada, to the Firearms Engravers Guild, and were given an award for artistic application to a gun. It was quite a project. This is a collage of what I've done. Steel canvas is a medium that I created for an art show I was invited to in the historic village of Leaper's Fork. The plein air painters got together. We're doing an art show. They invited me, but I don't paint. And so I went to my bench, and on was the array of tools and an eagle I was doing gold and silver inlay, and it looked like a painting. And I had this aha moment to do a steel canvas like a paintbrush, but with my engraving tools, and that's how this all started. I've, you know, done maybe 60 different pieces. On the far wall is the duck image, is probably one of my bigger pieces. This was the fourth steel canvas from the beginning of that. Each one of these feathers has 150 or so cuts. I can't. I don't think you can count the number of cuts involved in the entire piece, but
Beautiful.
thanks.
It's wonderful to see in person.
The ducks are sterling silver. So from this, then I dove into intaglio prints. So I'm doing impressions with soot, use fat wood, and put the soot on the engraving and do the intaglio prints.
Tell me a little bit about this hawk.
Yeah, this was my first successful forging. I can't tell you how many barrels I burned up. I purchased the video from Beaver Bill on how to forge a smoke hawk, and obviously that's why it has so much characteristics of his work. I think I got really lucky. I haven't done another one since, but that's my hawk. Motorcycle timing chain with gold inlay on the back side of it, and then the bowl, it has gold inlay.
Oh wow!
That's a combination of my mother's family. We migrated at the very early start of colonizing Connecticut. We were the first boots on the ground. My mother's family, the Griswolds, and this is all a continuation of who we are today with the combination of my family and my wife's family. The Griswolds, Victor Morrow Griswold, my great-great-grandfather, invented the ferrotype photographic process, which about 85% of all the images we have from the Civil War were photographed on his product, the ferrotype. Yeah, he started out in photography. He and his brother, Casimir Clayton Griswold, are exquisite plein air painters. And down through our family, art has been part of our life, and it's a lot of fun knowing that it continued in my gene pool too. Yeah.
I'd like to thank Greg for taking a little bit of time from the show to sit down and talk with me there some and go through his historic display. I've been following this project that Greg has been undergoing for many years now. I've got his book we're going to be talking about a little bit later this fall. And I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed listening to Greg talk about his passion for history and for recreating these really iconic American arms. It's not something that necessarily comes up a whole lot, but the Crockett family was building long rifles as a foundation. That was what they did. And that's kind of part of the backbone of America here, these family long rifle and gun builders. So if you'd like to learn more about Greg's efforts here and Greg's work, I'll have a link to his website down in the description of the video, as well as at ilovemuzzleloading.com. Again, I really encourage you to check out the book that he's published to go along with this beautiful display. I'm happy to share that Greg won the Best of Show for the Antiques category at the Contemporary Longrifle Association. I think it's well deserved, and I hope that you've enjoyed this little look into what Greg has been doing to document some of America's history here. I'm Ethan, I love muzzleloading. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you next time.